In the summer of 1259, somewhere on campaign against the Song, Mongke Khan, ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen, died of dysentery. He hadn't named an heir. Within a year, his empire would start tearing itself apart. 50 years earlier, a man named Temujin had united the Mongol tribes and taken the name Genghis Khan. What his sons and grandsons built afterward stretched from the Pacific to the doorstep of Europe. Right before the crack, this was already one state under one line of command, running from Korea's border to the edge of Europe, though southern China, the wealthy Song heartland, hadn't fallen yet. So here's the question worth asking: what if it hadn't broken? What if that civil war never happened and one dynasty had simply kept ruling all of it, straight through to today? The actual split came down to two grandsons of Genghis Khan, Kublai and Arik Bok, both claiming the throne after Mongke's death. They fought a 4-year civil war, and Kublai won, but the empire never recovered its single chain of command. By the 1270s, what had been one empire was really four, each drifting toward its own language, its own religion, its own rulebook. Even split 4 ways, this was still, on paper, close to a fifth of every human being alive on Earth living under some branch of Genghis Khan's family. Now imagine none of that division ever happens. One Khan, one bureaucracy, one army, ruling that entire footprint without interruption. What does that actually look like on a map today? Put those two together and you get close to 24 million square kilometers, and that's almost exactly the size the Mongol Empire actually reached at its height. Still, the largest contiguous land empire ever assembled by anyone ever. Holding that together wasn't just about armies. The Mongols built the Yam, a relay postal system with mounted riders and supply stations every few dozen kilometers, moving messages faster across Asia than any network before the telegraph. That's the infrastructure a unified empire would keep and grow. One customs system, one protected trade corridor from the Yellow Sea to the Black Sea. Merchants like the Polo family didn't stumble onto the Silk Road by luck. They used a road the Mongols made safe. But here's the complication people skip past. That same network of open roads and connected cities didn't just move silk and silver. In the 1340s, it moved the plague. A single unbroken empire wouldn't have prevented that pandemic. If anything, tighter integration and busier roads could have spread it faster and further than the fractured version of history we actually got. So a unified Mongol world isn't automatically a better one. It's a more connected one, and connection cuts both ways. There's a deeper problem too. Mongol succession was never settled by birth order, it ran through a Kurultai, a council of nobles choosing the next Khan. That system produced Genghis Khan's rise. It also produced this exact civil war. Meaning even in our version of history, where Arik Bok never challenges Kublai, some future succession crisis was almost certainly waiting a generation or two later. Structural cracks don't need a specific villain. Still, let's run the thought experiment all the way out. Say it holds not forever, but for centuries, the way Rome or the Caliphate held despite their own succession chaos. What would that state actually contain today? Roughly the territory of modern China, Mongolia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Ukraine, Belarus, Iran, Iraq, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and Afghanistan, all under one flag. Add up the people living in those countries right now, and you get somewhere around 1.8 billion, more than one in every 5 humans on Earth, under a single government. Economically, that bloc would be dominated by one member, obviously. China alone accounts for the overwhelming majority of it. Stack it all together, and this single state would post something close to $21 trillion in annual output. Only the United States would still outrank it. It would also control staggering physical resources, China's rare earths, Russia's oil and gas, Iran's gas reserves, Kazakhstan's uranium. Whoever ran this state wouldn't just rule people, they'd effectively corner entire global supply chains. Militarily, one command structure over that population base would field a standing and reserve force close to 6 million troops if it mobilized like modern China and Russia do today, combined more than double what any other single country fields. And culturally, this is where it gets strange. A single Mongol state ruling for 8 centuries probably never lets a distinct Russian identity crystallize the way it did, because that identity was partly forged in resistance to Golden Horde rule. It probably never lets the Ming dynasty rise either, since the Ming only existed because Han Chinese rebels threw the Yuan dynasty out in 1368. No expulsion, no Ming, no 5 centuries of a distinctly Chinese imperial identity rebuilding itself in opposition to Mongol rule. So the uncomfortable truth is this: the fragmentation of the Mongol Empire wasn't just a collapse. It was also the process that let Russia, China, and Persia grow back into the distinct civilizations we recognize now. A world where it never broke apart isn't obviously a stronger world. It might just be a more fragile one empire, one point of failure, sitting on top of 1.8 billion people and a fifth of the planet's economy. Mongke Khan's death in 1259 didn't just end one man's reign. It forced Eurasia to reorganize into the nations we still live in. Maybe that's the real answer. The empire didn't fail to hold together. It succeeded, instead, at becoming everything that came after it.